Wrestling fans, welcome to MWF Extra number 60. I am Dan Maurice. It is Friday, June the 28th, 2013. We weren't expecting to have this video produced today. We just found out not too long ago that Matt Borne has passed away. He competed here in the Millennium Wrestling Federation from 2010 to 2011. Matt is a second-generation wrestler, the son of tough Tony Borne. Matt went on to become one of the greats in the Pacific Northwest for Don Owens' promotion in Portland, Oregon. He went on to great fame in world-class championship wrestling. He teamed with Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer, managed by Percy Pringle III. Percy is better known as Paul Bear, the former MWF president that passed away on March 5th of this year, who recommended Matt come to the MWF as Doink back in 2010. As someone to try and be a locker room enforcer of sorts. From there, Borne went on to WCW. He had a run as Big Josh before he found his greatest fame, bringing life to a wrestling clown, the original evil Doink the Clown, often imitated every weekend, unfortunately, in several promotions across the country, but nobody did Doink better than Matt Borne. And hopefully, unless it's Ray Apollo, who was the second Doink in WWE, I think the character should be retired, even though some get an extra $20 on the weekend to put on the face paint as if they're going trick-or-treating for Halloween. I think it's time to treat Borne's legacy with a little respect. That's just my opinion. But anyway, I'm sure we'll have a much nicer video for Matt on our July programs. But today, I just wanted to take a clip from his studio shoot interview DVD he shot with us at MWF Studios back a couple of summers ago, where he talks about breaking into the business, a little bit about his dad, a little bit about his friendship with Jesse the Body Ventura out in Portland. And it goes without saying, our thoughts and prayers from everyone here in the Millennium Wrestling Federation go out to Matt's friends and family as well. Rest in peace, Matt Borne.
Around how old were you when you started to really put the pieces together that it wasn't 100% shoot, but you were seeing what was going on?
Okay, who?
What was that?
Okay, who?
Okay.
Oh, okay. No, actually, it's kind of different for me because I always knew, and nothing was ever explained to me. You know, I just saw things, and I believed because sometimes I would be in the car with my father, and if my dad was a heel or if my dad was a babyface, either the heel or the babyface was in the car with us, and we'd kayfabe, drop them 2 blocks off, you know, before we got to the building. But I would sit there and I'd be real tense because sometimes my dad was working with this guy that night. And so I was real tense, and they would kind of work me in the car, you know, like they were arguing, like, I'm giving you a ride, but don't mess with me, you know, I'm going to, you know, I'll pull this car over and kick your ass. So there's old Matt sitting there like going, oh, Dad, don't do this. But it was all cool, you know, I mean, it was a process, you know, and then they would look at me and laugh and smile. And so I was sparred up in a long, drawn-out time, you know, and it was kind of a good way, you know. My dad never explained anything to me. He just did it and let me watch.
Interesting.
Yeah.
At what age did you get the bug that you wanted to become a wrestler? Was it something you wanted to do from when you were really young, where your dad was one of the top superstars of the generation, or did you wait till maybe you were a teenager?
You know, well, really, when I was 6 and 7, I wanted to be a wrestler. But when I was 15 and 16, I didn't want to have anything to do with it. You know, it was kind of like a hills and valleys, you know? Yeah, because when I was in high school, I excelled in amateur wrestling and athletes. And I was very athletic. I was a football player. I was a 2-time state champion in wrestling. And I always looked at it like, if I succeed in wrestling, what's next? You know, if you're a great football player, you get drafted, you know? Basketball, you get drafted. You're a great amateur wrestler. What? Doesn't mean you're going to be a professional wrestler. Because it was like there was nothing after that. But actually what really made me cross that line was I was going to Portland State University, and my dad was in real estate. He's semi-retired, pretty much retired, but he was a real estate broker. And Jesse Ventura was in the area wrestling for Don Owens. And we became friends, you know. He'd go on the road and he'd come home, and he had a friend that used to send him the best marijuana in the world from Hawaii, and he'd call me. Hey, Matt, I'm home. Come on over. So, you know, Saturday Night Live was real big back then. So, my first wife and I were living together at the time. We weren't married, but she hated Jesse. She would say, "Why are you going over there and hang with that stupid guy? He's stupid." You know. Many years later, I told my oldest son, who's 30 now, I said, "Ask your mom about that. You know, the governor of Minnesota, she used to call him an idiot, but you know, that's
another story.
That's another story. But so I'd go over and party with Jesse and his wife Terry, and we'd sit around, take bong hits, and watch Saturday Night Live, and have a great time.
How did you see Jesse change over the years, where he went from, you know, being a pretty big star in the ring, then transitioned over to color commentary, and then became a governor?
You know what? It's weird because I always saw Jesse as having it all. You know, Jesse, when I first met him, he used to be talking. He had this spittoon by his chair. You know, he always had this big chew in his mouth, and we'd be sitting there taking bong hits, and Jesse'd be sitting there laughing and talking. He'd be rocking like this, you know, "Hey, Matt," you know. But I always loved him, you know, because I knew he was a Navy SEAL. I had the utmost respect for him, and he was smart. He would tell me stories about growing up and, you know, the things that he did, and he was talking politics. And, you know, I didn't know his education background or how far he went with his education, but everything he said, you know, he believed. You know, he was a guy that was destined to have whatever he wanted in life, you know, and I saw that back then, and I always respected him. I always admired him. Yeah.
Back in the day where you broke into professional wrestling, this was before the proliferation of professional wrestling schools, quote unquote. We talked about that last night. How did you particularly break into the business? Were you just basically learn the craft, almost like an apprentice, where your dad was already in the business, or explain?
You know, I never went to a wrestling school. You know, when I was 16, I got my driver's license. My dad used to run spot shows for Don Owens. So I used to drive the ring truck, set the ring up, and sometimes be the timekeeper. And heck, you know, I mean, he paid me pretty good. It was a good summer job to have between school, you know. And I would just watch guys, you know. I used to get in the ring. But when I decided to actually that I wanted to wrestle because of Jesse, he was making good money back then. I said, what am I going to do when I get out of college, when I graduate? You know, I didn't even know what I wanted to do. I was a business major, but what am I going to do? So I decided, I know the wrestling business, you know. I think I can do it. So I got in the ring 3 times. Threw some drop kicks, which I was a natural. You know, I could drop kick somebody in the face first time I ever did it.
Really?
And I never really learned how to, you know, reverse moves or anything. I just learned what I saw all my life. And I thought that was going to get me through. But my first match, oh my God, I got out there and I froze, you know. It was my first match. It was my dad and I against Kurt Von Steiger and Ace Brennan. Now, who Ace Brennan is, I don't know, but he was a bleach blonde fat guy, you know. And we got out there, and I'm with Kurt Von Steiger in the corner. My dad, we broke into this 4-way. My dad's over here getting his ass kicked in this corner, and I'm fighting with Kurt Von Steiger, and I froze. What's happening with my dad? I turned around to look. My dad's getting his butt kicked over in this corner, and Kurt Von Steiger said, "Come on, kid, keep it up." You know, so he turned me back around, and I started pounding on him again. But the match was the shits.
You're honest.
Hey, you know, the match was the shits. But
way to start.
you know, it was a match, and it gave me that experience, and you know, from there, it's better than the match being, oh, that was a great match, and then from there it went down. You know, the match was the shits. We started here, so I had no place to go but up. You know?
Consistent anyway.
Yeah.
What were your memories and thoughts on Don Owens as a promoter and a booker back in the day?
Don Owens and my father were always good friends, but Don Owens had this philosophy because everybody liked the territory. The Northwest was a great territory. Everybody wanted to come there. And when we went there when I was young, my dad bought a home and he connected. My dad was on top. He was like the man for years and years. But Don Owens had this saying, if you ever want to move and come to this territory and stay here and buy a home, make sure the home is on wheels. You know, because let's face it, territories, you know, you stay in a territory for a while and you move on to the next. Doesn't mean you can never come back.
Right.
You know, you go away, you come back, you know. But Don Owens was real, you know, he was real leery about guys wanting to settle down there. You know?
Really?
Yeah. And actually second generation wrestlers like me, he was skeptical about me, you know.
Really?
Yeah, and that's why he started me there, and then I went off. I always came back, but yeah, it was kind of a touchy thing.